The silver locket felt like a burning coal in Marissa Thompson's palm as she stood outside the pawnbroker's dusty window in Deming, New Mexico, wondering if pawning her mother's last gift would even cover a single meal and a night's shelter. The harsh July sun of 1883 beat down on her threadbare dress, and she could feel the eyes of the town watching her from every shadowy doorway and window, their judgment as heavy as the desert heat itself. She had been in Deming for 3 months now, ever since the stagecoach accident that had killed her father and left her stranded in this unforgiving railroad town. The money they had been carrying west, their entire life savings meant for a new start in California, had been stolen in the confusion following the crash. The local marshal had promised an investigation, but weeks turned into months with no answers, no justice, and no hope. Her father's body lay in the town cemetery under a simple wooden cross that she visited every morning before the heat became unbearable. The debt had come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The doctor who had treated her minor injuries from the accident, the undertaker who had buried her father, the boarding house where she had stayed those first weeks, believing the marshal would recover their money, the general store where she had bought food on credit, not understanding how quickly interest could compound in a town where outsiders were seen as easy marks. Now the sum total was more than she could ever hope to repay, and the men who held those debts were growing impatient. Marissa took a deep breath and pushed open the door to the pawn shop, the bell above jangling harshly in the dim interior. The shop smelled of old leather, gun oil, and desperation. Rows of abandoned possessions lined the walls. Pocket watches that no longer kept time, wedding rings from broken marriages, rifles from men who could no longer afford ammunition, musical instruments that would never play another song. The pawnbroker, a thin man named Silas Reed with calculating eyes and fingers stained yellow from tobacco, looked up from his ledger. "Miss Thompson," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her skin crawl. "Come to make a payment on your account." "I came to sell something," Marissa said, her voice steadier than she felt. She placed the locket on the scarred wooden counter between them. The silver caught the light filtering through the grimy window, and for a moment the delicate engraving of roses seemed to bloom. Silas picked up the locket with surprising gentleness, turning it over in his hands. He opened it, revealing the tiny photographs inside. Marissa's mother on one side, beautiful and young and full of hope, and on the other side her father, stern but kind. Both of them gone now, taken by illness and accident before their time. "Pretty piece," Silas said. "Sterling silver, good craftsmanship. I could give you $12 for it." Marissa's heart sank. She owed nearly $200 to various creditors around town, and the interest was accumulating daily. $12 would not even cover a week's worth of her debts. "It is worth more than that," she said, hearing the desperation creep into her voice despite her best efforts. "It was made by a silversmith in Boston. The photographs are hand-tinted." "Might be worth more in Boston," Silas agreed, "but we are in Deming, New Mexico, and silver lockets are not exactly in high demand among railroad workers and cattle drivers." He set the locket back on the counter and pushed it toward her. $12 is my offer. Take it or leave it." The bell above the door jangled again, and Marissa turned to see a tall figure silhouetted against the bright sunlight outside. As her eyes adjusted, she made out a man in his late 20s, wearing dusty trail clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to hard living, and there was something about the way he carried himself that made even Silas straighten up behind his counter. The man walked to a display of saddles near the back of the shop. But Marissa had the distinct impression he was listening to every word of their conversation. She turned back to Silas, fighting the urge to simply grab the locket and run from this place, from this town, from the trap that kept closing tighter around her with each passing day. "The locket is all I have left," Marissa said quietly. "There must be something more you can offer." Silas leaned forward, his elbows on the counter. "Well now, Miss Thompson, there might be another arrangement we could discuss. You are a pretty young woman, and there are establishments in town that are always looking for girls. I could introduce you to some people, maybe work out a deal on your debts in exchange for certain services." The implication was clear, and Marissa felt her face flush with a mixture of shame and anger. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could form the words, the stranger from the back of the shop was suddenly at the counter beside her. "The lady is not interested in your arrangements," the man said, and his voice was low and dangerous. He picked up the locket from the counter and examined it briefly before handing it back to Marissa. "And this is not for sale." Silas's face darkened. "Now see here, stranger, this is a private business transaction between Miss Thompson and myself. I suggest you mind your own affairs." "I am making it my affair," the man said. He turned to Marissa, and she saw his face clearly for the first time. He had strong, angular features weathered by sun and wind, dark eyes that seemed to see right through her, and a scar that cut a thin white line across his left cheekbone. Despite his trail-worn appearance, there was something inherently decent in his expression, something that made her want to trust him even though she knew better than to trust anyone in this town. "How much does she owe?" the stranger asked Silas, his eyes never leaving Marissa's face. "That is none of your concern," Silas sputtered. "And even if it were, the debts are spread across half the businesses in town. It is not just me she owes." The stranger finally turned his attention back to Silas, and the pawnbroker actually took a step backward. "I asked you a question." Silas swallowed hard. "I would have to check with the others, but I believe the total is somewhere around $190, plus interest that comes to another 30 or so. Call it $220 all told." The amount sounded even more impossible when spoken aloud. Marissa felt the familiar weight of despair settling on her shoulders. $220 might as well have been $2,000 for all her ability to pay it. She had been working odd jobs around town when she could find them, but no one wanted to employ a woman with debts hanging over her head, and the few jobs she had managed to secure paid barely enough to keep her fed, let alone make any progress on what she owed. The stranger reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He counted out bills onto the counter with deliberate care, and Marissa watched in disbelief as the pile grew. "This is $250, the man said. "It covers her debts with $30 extra. You will collect from the other creditors and settle her accounts in full. Any money left over after the debts are cleared goes back to her. Are we clear?" Silas stared at the money on his counter like it might bite him. "Now wait just a minute. I cannot just forgive debts on your say-so. There are procedures, papers to be signed, agreements to be made. And what is to stop her from running up more debts once these are cleared?" "She will not be running up more debts," the stranger said, "because she will not be staying in this town. And you will settle those accounts today, not next week, not next month. Today. Because if I ride back through Deming and find out that you have pocketed this money without clearing her name, I will be very disappointed. You do not want to disappoint me." There was no overt threat in the man's words, but Silas paled anyway. He scooped up the money quickly, as if afraid the stranger might change his mind. "Yes, of course. I will see to it immediately. The debts will be cleared by sundown, you have my word." "Your word and a nickel will buy me a cup of coffee," the stranger said. I will be checking. He placed his hand lightly on Marissa's elbow and guided her toward the door. She went with him in a daze, clutching her mother's locket so tightly that the engraved roses pressed into her palm. Outside, the sunlight was blinding after the dimness of the pawnshop. Marissa blinked away spots and turned to face the stranger who had just upended her entire world. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "You do not even know me." The man smiled for the first time, and it transformed his stern features into something almost boyish. "Call it an impulse," he said. "I do not like seeing people get taken advantage of, especially by bottom feeders like Silas Reed. Besides, no woman should have to sell her mother's locket to pay off debts that were likely inflated and unjust to begin with." "But $250, Marissa said, her mind still reeling. "That is a fortune. How can I ever repay you?" "You do not owe me anything," the stranger said firmly. "And you do not owe this town anything either. The debts are paid, and you are free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. You do not have to stay in Deming another day if you do not want to." The simple statement hit Marissa with unexpected force. She had been trapped for so long, weighted down by obligations, and the judgment of people who saw her as nothing more than a foolish girl who had gotten herself into a bad situation. The idea that she could simply leave, that she was free, seemed too good to be true. "I do not understand," she said. "Who are you? Why would you do this for a complete stranger?" The man extended his hand. "Name is August Donovan. I am a horse trader mostly, though I do some ranch work when the seasons are lean. I have been on the trail for the better part of 6 months, delivering a string of horses to a ranch outside of El Paso. I stopped in Deming to rest my own horse and stock up on supplies before heading back north." Marissa shook his hand, noting the calluses and the strength in his grip. "Marissa Thompson," she said, "and I still do not understand why you helped me." August released her hand and adjusted his hat against the sun. "Let me ask you something, Miss Thompson. How did you end up in Deming with all these debts?" So Marissa told him, standing there on the dusty street while people passed by and pretended not to listen. She told him about her father's dream of starting a new life in California, about the stagecoach accident, about the stolen money, and the marshal who never found it, about how the debts had accumulated through a combination of bad luck and the town's willingness to extend credit to an orphaned girl who had no idea how the world really worked. She told him about the lonely months of trying to make enough money to pay back what she owed, about the growing realization that she was trapped in a situation with no good way out. August listened without interrupting, his dark eyes focused on her face with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow did not. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "You got a raw deal," he said finally. "This town saw an easy mark and took advantage. That doctor probably charged you 3 times what he should have for bandaging a few cuts. The undertaker likely did the same. And the boarding house and the store, they knew you were desperate, so they kept extending credit with interest rates that would make a bank robber blush. You could have worked for 10 years and never paid off what they claimed you owed." "But I did owe them," Marissa protested. "They provided services and I could not pay. That is on me, not them." "There is a difference between honest debt and exploitation," August said. "What happened to you was exploitation. This town chewed you up and would have spit you out without a second thought. That is why I paid your debts. Not because you needed saving, but because it was the right thing to do. And now you do not owe this town anything. Not loyalty, not gratitude, not even a goodbye if you do not want to give it." His words kindled something in Marissa's chest, a small flame of defiance that she had thought long extinguished. He was right. This town had taken everything from her, her father, her money, her hope, very nearly her mother's locket. She did not owe Deming, New Mexico, anything at all. "Where will you go?" August asked. Marissa looked down at the locket in her hand, at her mother's young, hopeful face. "I do not know," she admitted. "My father wanted to go to California to start a ranch near Sacramento. But I do not have the money for passage, and I have no idea how to run a ranch even if I got there." "California is a long way off," August said thoughtfully. "And the route west is dangerous for a woman traveling alone. Have you given any thought to other options?" "There are not many options for a woman on her own," Marissa said with more bitterness than she intended. "I could try to find work as a teacher or a seamstress, but those positions are scarce and usually go to women with connections or references. I could join a wagon train heading west and hope to find a husband along the way, but that seems like trading one kind of desperation for another. Or I suppose I could do what Silas suggested and work in a saloon, though I would rather starve." August's jaw tightened at the mention of Silas's suggestion. "There is another option," he said carefully. "You could come north with me. I am heading back to my ranch in Colorado, just south of Denver. The territory is growing fast, and there are opportunities there for people willing to work hard. I could use help with the horses if you are interested in learning. It would give you time to figure out your next move, and you would be away from this place." Marissa studied August's face, trying to read his intentions. She had learned the hard way that men rarely offered help without expecting something in return. "What would you want from me?" she asked bluntly. August met her gaze without flinching. "An honest day's work in exchange for room, board, and fair wages. Nothing more. I have a housekeeper named Mrs. Chen who lives on the property with her husband. They are good people, and Mrs. Chen would be happy for the female company. You would have your own quarters, your own space. I am offering you a job, Miss Thompson, not anything else." There was something in his eyes, a directness and sincerity that made Marissa want to believe him. But she had been fooled before by kind words and seemingly generous offers. "Why would you trust a stranger to help with your horses?" she asked. "I do not have experience with ranch work." "I am a pretty good judge of character," August said with a slight smile. "And my horses are good judges too. If you turn out to be untrustworthy or unwilling to learn, we will figure something else out. But I do not think that will be the case. You have been dealt a bad hand, Miss Thompson, but you have not given up. You were willing to sell your mother's locket, the last thing you had of value, to try to make things right. That tells me you are someone who faces her problems head-on. Those are the kind of people I want working with me." Marissa felt tears prick at her eyes, though she was not sure if they were from relief, gratitude, or simple exhaustion. For 3 months, she had been drowning in this town, and now suddenly someone was throwing her a rope. It seemed too good to be true, and yet August Donovan did not seem like the type of man who made empty promises. "I would like that," she said softly. "If you are serious about the offer, I would like very much to come north with you and learn about horses." August's smile widened into a genuine grin. "Good. We will leave first thing in the morning. That gives you time to collect any belongings you have and say your goodbyes if there is anyone you want to say goodbye to." Marissa thought about the people of Deming, the creditors who had hounded her, the townspeople who had whispered about her, the marshal who had stopped returning her inquiries about the stolen money. "There is only one place I need to go," she said. "The cemetery. I need to say goodbye to my father." "I will go with you if you want company," August offered, "or I can give you privacy, whatever you prefer." "Company would be nice," Marissa admitted. She had visited her father's grave alone so many times, had spent so many mornings crying quietly beside that simple wooden cross. The idea of having someone with her, even a stranger, was oddly comforting. They walked together through the dusty streets of Deming, past the railroad depot where her father had died, past the boarding house where she had spent her last pennies, past the general store with its predatory credit terms. Marissa felt like she was seeing the town for the first time with clear eyes, understanding now that it had never been a place of refuge or hope. It had been a trap, and she had very nearly been caught in it permanently. The cemetery was at the edge of town, a small plot of land surrounded by a low, adobe wall. Most of the graves were marked with simple wooden crosses, though a few of the wealthier deceased had proper headstones. Marissa led August to her father's grave in the far corner, beneath the meager shade of a struggling cottonwood tree. "Robert Thompson," August read from the cross. "That is a good, solid name." "He was a good man," Marissa said, kneeling beside the grave. The earth had long since settled, and desert wildflowers had begun to grow around the cross. She touched the ground gently, as if she could somehow reach through the soil and feel her father's presence one more time. "He wanted better for us." He spent 20 years working in a factory in Baltimore, saving every penny he could, dreaming of owning his own land out west. When my mother died 2 years ago, he decided it was time. He sold everything we had, bought passage on a stagecoach, and we started west. We made it all the way to New Mexico before everything fell apart. August crouched beside her, his eyes on the grave. "I am sorry for your loss," he said simply. "It is not fair what happened to you both." "Life is not fair," Marissa said, echoing something her father used to tell her. "But we do the best we can with what we are given." She looked up at August. "That is what you are doing, is it not? Giving me a chance to do better with what I have left." "I suppose so," August agreed, "though I confess my motives are not entirely selfless. I really could use help with the horses, and Mrs. Chen has been after me to hire another hand for months. You would be doing me a favor as much as I am doing you one." Marissa smiled through her tears. "Somehow I doubt that, but I appreciate you saying it." She pulled a small wildflower from beside the grave and tucked it behind her ear, something her mother used to do. "Goodbye, Papa," she whispered. "I am going to Colorado. I am going to learn about horses and figure out who I am meant to be. I think you would approve." The wind rustled through the cottonwood tree, and for a moment, Marissa let herself believe it was her father's blessing. Then she stood, brushed the dust from her skirt, and turned away from the grave with August at her side. They spent the rest of the afternoon making preparations for the journey north. August checked on his horses at the livery stable, a string of 5 beautiful animals that he had bought in El Paso to add to his breeding stock. Marissa gathered her few belongings from the boarding house, which took less than 15 minutes. She had arrived in Deming with a trunk full of clothes and keepsakes. Now all she had left was a single carpet bag with 2 threadbare dresses, some undergarments, her mother's locket, and a small Bible that had belonged to her grandmother. The boarding house mistress, a severe woman named Mrs. Holloway, looked almost disappointed to see Marissa leaving. "You cannot just run off without settling your account," she protested. "My account has been settled," Marissa said firmly. "Silas Reed is collecting from all my creditors today. If you have not received payment by this evening, take it up with him, not me. I do not owe this town anything anymore." The words felt powerful, liberating. Mrs. Holloway's sour expression was deeply satisfying as Marissa walked out of the boarding house for the last time. August met her at the livery stable as the sun was beginning to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink. He had purchased supplies for the journey and had the horses ready to travel. "We will leave at first light," he explained. "It is about 300 miles to the ranch, so we will be on the trail for close to 2 weeks, maybe a bit longer depending on weather and how the horses hold up." I have made this trip enough times to know the safe places to camp and the towns where we can resupply if needed." 2 weeks, Marissa repeated, trying to imagine that much time on the trail. She had never been a particularly outdoorsy person. Her life in Baltimore had been city streets and factory neighborhoods. Even the trip west with her father had been in a stagecoach with regular stops at way stations. August must have seen the uncertainty on her face because he said, "You will be fine. I will teach you what you need to know. By the time we reach Colorado, you will be a seasoned traveler." They took rooms at a different boarding house for the night, a cleaner establishment near the edge of town, where August was apparently a regular customer. The owner, a friendly Mexican woman named Senora Garcia, greeted August with a warm embrace and then turned her welcoming smile on Marissa. "Any friend of Senor Donovan is welcome here," she said in lightly accented English. "You must both be hungry. I have pozole cooking and fresh tortillas. Come eat." The meal was the best food Marissa had eaten in months. The rich, hominy-based stew was filling and flavorful, and Senora Garcia kept pressing second and third helpings on them both. As they ate, August told stories about his travels, close calls with mountain lions, encounters with difficult clients, the year he got snowed in at his ranch and had to survive on dried beans and jerky for 2 months. Marissa found herself laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. August had an easy way of storytelling, making even hardship sound like an adventure. And there was something in the way he looked at her across the table, a warm interest in his eyes that made her heart beat a little faster. She pushed the feeling aside. August had been clear that he was offering employment, nothing more. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for her new employer and complicate an already complex situation. After dinner, Senora Garcia showed Marissa to a small but clean room with a real bed and fresh linens. "Senor Donovan is a good man," the older woman said as she lit the lamp on the bedside table. "He has been coming through Deming for years, and he always treats everyone with respect. You are lucky to have found him." "I know," Marissa said softly, "though I am still not entirely sure why he decided to help me." Senora Garcia smiled knowingly. "Perhaps he saw something in you that reminded him of himself. Senor Donovan, he also knows what it is like to struggle, to feel trapped by circumstances beyond his control. He does not talk about it much, but I have known him long enough to see the shadows in his eyes sometimes. We all have our pasts, Nina. The question is whether we let them define us or whether we use them to become stronger." After Senora Garcia left, Marissa lay in the comfortable bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind churning with thoughts of the past and the uncertain future. Tomorrow she would leave Deming forever, would start a journey to a place she had never been with a man she had just met. It should have been terrifying, and perhaps part of her was terrified, but mostly she felt something she had not experienced in a long time: hope. She pulled out her mother's locket and opened it, studying the tiny photographs in the lamplight. "Watch over me," she whispered to the faces of her parents. "Help me figure out who I am supposed to be." The lamp flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and Marissa closed her eyes, letting herself imagine a future that did not involve debts and desperation. A future with horses and wide open spaces and maybe, just maybe, the chance to build something real. Morning came early. August knocked on her door before dawn, and they met Senora Garcia in the kitchen for a quick breakfast of eggs and coffee. The older woman pressed a package of food into Marissa's hands for the journey, refusing payment despite August's protests. "You take care of each other out there," Senora Garcia said, hugging them both. "The trail can be dangerous, but I have faith you will arrive safely." The horses were ready and waiting at the livery. August helped Marissa mount a gentle mare named Daisy, adjusting the stirrups to fit her shorter legs and showing her how to hold the reins properly. "Daisy is one of the sweetest horses I have ever raised," he explained. "She will take care of you while you are learning to ride properly." Marissa settled into the saddle awkwardly, her muscles already protesting the unfamiliar position. August swung onto his own horse, a tall bay gelding named Storm, with practiced ease. The other 5 horses were tied in a line behind him, ready to follow. They rode out of Deming just as the sun was breaking over the eastern horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Marissa did not look back at the town that had caused her so much pain. Instead, she kept her eyes forward, focused on the trail ahead and the broad shoulders of the man who had given her a second chance at life. The first day of travel was harder than Marissa had expected. Despite Daisy's gentle gait, hours in the saddle left her sore and aching in muscles she did not know she had. August was patient with her inexperience, stopping frequently to let her rest and stretch, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the territory they were passing through. "New Mexico is beautiful if you know how to look at it," he said as they paused at midday to water the horses at a small stream. "Most people just see desert and emptiness, but there is life everywhere if you pay attention. See those tracks." He pointed to marks in the sandy soil near the water's edge. "Deer came through here this morning, probably a doe and 2 fawns based on the size of the prints. And those bushes over there are good for making tea if you steep the leaves long enough. The native tribes have been using them for medicine for hundreds of years." Marissa found herself fascinated by August's knowledge of the land. He seemed to notice everything. The circling hawks overhead, the distant smudge of smoke that indicated a ranch or settlement, the subtle changes in the terrain that told him where to find water and shelter. It was clear he had spent most of his life outdoors, reading the landscape the way she might read a book. As they traveled, they talked. August told her about his ranch in Colorado, about the string of horses he was building through careful breeding and training. "My father was a horse trader too," he explained. "He taught me everything he knew before he died 5 years ago, left me the ranch and a dozen breeding horses. I have been building on that foundation ever since, trying to develop horses that are strong enough for ranch work, but gentle enough for family use. There is always a market for good horses, especially as more people move west." "It sounds like you have built something impressive," Marissa said, trying to ignore the ache in her lower back. "It is a work in progress," August said with a modest shrug. "Some years are better than others. Last winter was particularly hard. Lost 3 horses to illness and had to spend money I did not really have on veterinary care for the others. That is part of why I took this job delivering horses to El Paso. The payment was good, and it gave me a chance to scout for new breeding stock. Those 5 horses we are bringing back will help strengthen the bloodlines." "What happened to your mother?" Marissa asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I am sorry, that is none of my business." "It is fine," August said. "She died when I was 12, consumption. It was just me and my father after that, until he passed. I have been on my own for the last 5 years, which suits me well enough most of the time. Gets lonely sometimes, though. That is why I was glad when Mr. and Mrs. Chen agreed to come work for me 2 years ago. They needed a fresh start after some trouble in San Francisco, and I needed people I could trust to help run the place. They camped that night under a sky full of more stars than Marissa had ever seen in her life. August built a fire and cooked beans and salt pork while Marissa tried to stretch out her protesting muscles. After dinner, August showed her how to lay out her bedroll and how to bank the fire so it would last through the night without becoming a hazard. "You did well today," he said as they sat by the fire, the horses dozing nearby. "I know it was not easy for your first day on the trail, but you did not complain once. That takes strength." "I was raised not to complain about things that cannot be changed," Marissa said. "My mother used to say that complaining was just wasted breath that could be better used for problem solving." August smiled. "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was," Marissa agreed, her fingers unconsciously going to the locket around her neck. "She died of fever 2 years ago. It was sudden, unexpected. One week she was fine, and the next she was gone. My father was devastated. I think that is why he was so determined to go west, to start fresh somewhere without memories of her on every street corner." "And now you are going west after all," August observed. "Just not the way your father planned." "No," Marissa said softly, "but I think he would be glad I am not trapped in Deming anymore. He always said the worst thing a person could do was give up on themselves. For a while there, I was close to giving up. If you had not walked into that pawn shop when you did, I do not know what would have happened to me." August was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "I do not believe in coincidence," he said finally. "I think we end up in the places we are meant to be, with the people we are meant to meet. Maybe I was supposed to stop in Deming yesterday. Maybe you were supposed to be in that pawn shop at exactly that moment. Or maybe I am just trying to find meaning in random chance. Either way, I am glad things worked out the way they did." Marissa felt her heart do an odd little flip in her chest. There was something in August's voice, a warmth and sincerity that made her feel valued in a way she had not felt in a long time. She reminded herself again not to read too much into his kindness. He was her employer, offering her a fresh start. That was all. Anything more was just her lonely heart grasping at straws. But as she lay in her bedroll that night, staring up at the river of stars overhead, she could not quite convince herself that what she was feeling was purely gratitude. There was something else there, something that had sparked to life the moment August had picked up her mother's locket and told Silas Reed it was not for sale. Something that grew a little stronger every time August smiled at her, every time he patiently answered her questions, every time she caught him looking at her with those dark, thoughtful eyes. She fell asleep to the sound of the horses moving softly in the darkness and the crackling of the fire, and for the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. The days fell into a comfortable rhythm. They would rise before dawn, eat a quick breakfast, and be on the trail by first light. August continued to teach Marissa about reading the land, about caring for the horses, about the 1,000 small skills needed to survive in the wilderness. She proved to be a quick learner, absorbing information like a sponge and asking intelligent questions that often made August pause and think. Her body gradually adapted to the demands of riding. The aches and pains that had plagued her the first few days faded, replaced by growing strength and endurance. She learned to move with Daisy's rhythm instead of fighting it, to anticipate the mare's responses to different terrain, to communicate through subtle shifts in her weight and the pressure of her knees. August seemed pleased with her progress. "You are a natural," he told her on the 5th day as they navigated a rocky stretch of trail. "Most people take weeks to develop the kind of seat you have already. Daisy likes you too. See how her ears are always turned back toward you. She is listening for your cues, trusting you to guide her." Marissa stroked the mare's neck affectionately. She had never considered herself an animal person, but there was something deeply satisfying about the growing bond between her and Daisy. The horse was patient with her mistakes and seemed to sense when Marissa was nervous or uncertain, adjusting her pace and movements accordingly. They passed through small towns and settlements along the way, stopping to resupply when needed but never staying long. August seemed to prefer the open trail to civilization, and Marissa found she agreed with him. After months of being trapped in Deming, surrounded by people who judged her and took advantage of her, there was something liberating about the vast emptiness of the territory. Out here, she was just Marissa, a woman learning to ride and finding her way in the world. Her past did not define her, and her future was whatever she chose to make it. On the 8th day, they reached the border between New Mexico and Colorado. August pointed out the landmark with obvious pride. "Welcome to Colorado territory," he said. "We are about 5 days from the ranch now, assuming the weather holds." The landscape was beginning to change as they traveled north. The flat desert gave way to rolling hills, and in the distance, Marissa could see the first hints of mountains, their peaks still capped with snow even in July. The air was cooler here, less oppressively hot, and there were more trees, pines and aspens that provided welcome shade during the hottest part of the day. That night, they camped beside a clear mountain stream, and August caught fresh trout for dinner. As they ate, he told Marissa more about his ranch and the life she could expect there. "The main house is nothing fancy," he said. "2 stories, built by my father with timber from the property. There is a bunkhouse for the hands, though right now it is just Mr. and Mrs. Chen living there. The barn and stable can hold about 30 horses comfortably, and we have corrals for training and exercise. The property is about 500 acres, with good grazing land and access to mountain water. It is not the biggest spread in Colorado, but it is mine, and I have put everything I have into making it work." "It sounds wonderful," Marissa said honestly. The picture he painted was so different from her life in Baltimore or the nightmare of Deming. She tried to imagine herself living on a horse ranch in the Colorado mountains, learning to train animals and work the land. It seemed like a dream, something too good to be real. "What will my duties be?" she asked. "You mentioned helping with the horses, but what does that actually entail?" August considered the question. "A bit of everything, honestly. Feeding, grooming, exercising the horses, helping with training when you have learned enough, keeping track of breeding schedules and foaling dates, maintaining the tack and equipment. Mrs. Chen handles most of the household work and cooking, but she could probably use help in the garden. We try to grow as much of our own food as possible since the nearest town is a solid day's ride away. Does any of that sound too daunting?" "Not at all," Marissa said, though privately she wondered if she would be able to handle the physical demands of ranch work. She had gotten stronger on the trail, but she was still thin and somewhat fragile from her months of near starvation in Deming. "I will do my best to be useful." "I owe you so much already." August's expression turned serious. "I told you before, Marissa, you do not owe me anything. I paid your debts because it was the right thing to do, and I offered you this job because I think you will be good at it. Whatever happens from here on out, you do not owe me. You work, I pay you fair wages, and we both benefit. That is how employment works." "I know," Marissa said, "but I still feel grateful. You could have walked past that pawn shop without stopping. You could have ignored what Silas was saying to me. You could have paid my debts and sent me on my way. Instead, you offered me a real chance at a new life. That means something to me, even if it was just good business sense on your part." August poked at the fire with a stick, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. "It was not just business sense," he admitted quietly. "When I saw you in that shop, clutching your mother's locket like it was the last solid thing in your world, something in me just knew I had to help. I have been where you were, Marissa. Maybe not in the exact same situation, but I have known what it is like to feel trapped, to feel like the whole world is against you and there is no way out. Someone gave me a hand up when I needed it most. I figured it was time I did the same for someone else." "Who helped you?" Marissa asked softly. August was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "My father's best friend, a man named Thomas Garrett. After my mother died, my father fell apart for a while. Started drinking, stopped taking care of the ranch, nearly lost everything. I was just a kid, maybe 13 years old, and I was trying to hold things together, but I did not know how. Thomas stepped in. He helped my father get sober, helped us get the ranch back on track, taught me how to really work with horses instead of just feeding them and turning them out to pasture. He did not have to do any of that. We were not family, but he saw we needed help and he gave it freely. My father always said he owed Thomas his life. I think in a way I owe him mine too." "What happened to him?" Marissa asked. "He died about a year before my father passed," August said. "Heart gave out in his sleep. He was a good man, one of the best I have ever known. I think about him often, especially when I am faced with decisions about how to treat people, what kind of man I want to be. I like to think he would approve of me helping you." Marissa felt tears prick at her eyes. "I am sure he would," she said, "and I promise I will work hard to prove I was worth the investment." August looked up at her, and in the firelight his eyes were impossibly warm. "You are already worth it, Marissa. Do not ever think otherwise." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Marissa could not quite name. Then August cleared his throat and stood, breaking the spell. "We should get some sleep. Tomorrow we start climbing into the mountains proper, and the trail gets rougher from here." But as Marissa settled into her bedroll that night, she could not stop thinking about the look in August's eyes, the gentleness in his voice when he said her name. She was developing feelings for him, real feelings that went far beyond gratitude. It was probably foolish, almost certainly premature, but her heart did not seem to care about logic or good sense. August Donovan had saved her, yes, but more than that, he had treated her with dignity and respect when the rest of the world had been ready to discard her. How could she not fall a little bit in love with him? The last 5 days of the journey took them deep into the Colorado mountains. The terrain was breathtaking and treacherous in equal measure. They climbed narrow trails that hugged steep cliff faces, crossed rushing streams swollen with snowmelt, and navigated through dense forests of pine and aspen. August remained vigilant, constantly watching for signs of danger. Loose rocks that could cause a horse to stumble, mountain lions stalking from the shadows, sudden changes in weather that could turn deadly in the thin mountain air. Marissa found herself relying on August more and more as the journey progressed, not just for practical guidance but for emotional support. The mountains were beautiful but intimidating, and there were moments when she felt overwhelmed by the vast wildness of it all. August seemed to sense when she was struggling. He would ride closer to her, pointing out a particularly beautiful vista or telling a funny story to distract her from her fears. On the 13th day, as they crested a high ridge, August pulled Storm to a halt and pointed down into the valley below. "There," he said, and there was unmistakable pride in his voice. "That is home." Marissa followed his gaze and caught her breath. Nestled in a broad mountain valley, surrounded by towering peaks and thick forests, was a cluster of buildings that could only be August's ranch. Even from a distance, she could see it was well maintained. A large main house with a stone chimney, several smaller outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and fields of cultivated land. A stream wound through the property, glinting silver in the afternoon sunlight. "It is beautiful," Marissa breathed. "It is home," August said simply. "Come on, let us go introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Chen." The descent into the valley took another hour, and by the time they reached the ranch proper, Marissa was exhausted but exhilarated. As they rode into the main yard, the door to the house flew open, and a small, energetic woman with graying black hair came rushing out. "Mr. August," she cried in accented English, "you are back. We have been worried. You are 3 days later than we expected." "Had some business to take care of in Deming," August said, dismounting and giving the woman a warm hug. "Mrs. Chen, I would like you to meet Marissa Thompson. She will be helping us with the horses. Marissa, this is Mrs. Chen, who keeps this place running whether I am here or not." Mrs. Chen turned her sharp, appraising eyes on Marissa. For a moment, Marissa felt herself being measured and judged. Then Mrs. Chen's face broke into a warm smile. "Welcome, Miss Thompson. Come, come, you must be tired from the journey. Mr. August, you take care of the horses. I will take Miss Thompson inside and get her settled." Before Marissa could protest, Mrs. Chen had linked arms with her and was leading her toward the house, chattering away about preparations for dinner and how good it would be to have another woman around the place. Marissa glanced back over her shoulder to see August watching them with an amused smile on his face. He gave her an encouraging nod before turning his attention to the horses. The interior of the ranch house was exactly as August had described, simple but comfortable. The main floor held a large kitchen with a massive wood-burning stove, a dining area with a hand-crafted table big enough to seat 8, and a cozy sitting room with a fireplace and several well-worn chairs. Mrs. Chen led Marissa upstairs, where there were 4 bedrooms. "Mr. August sleeps in the master bedroom at the end of the hall," Mrs. Chen explained. "This room here will be yours. It was supposed to be for guests, but Mr. August does not have many visitors. I have kept it clean and aired out just in case. The other 2 rooms are storage right now, but maybe someday there will be children to fill them." She said the last part with a meaningful look that made Marissa blush. "Oh no, it is not like that," she stammered. "Mr. Donovan is my employer. He was kind enough to offer me a position here after some difficulties in New Mexico." Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly, but did not comment further. She opened the door to reveal a cheerful room with a real bed covered in a colorful quilt, a dresser with a mirror, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a window that looked out over the corrals and the mountains beyond. "It is perfect," Marissa said, her throat tight with emotion. After months of uncertainty and hardship, she finally had a place of her own, a room that was clean and safe and hers. "You settle in," Mrs. Chen said. "Wash up if you like. There is hot water in the kitchen. Dinner will be ready in an hour. Mr. Chen will want to meet you, and we can discuss your duties starting tomorrow." After Mrs. Chen left, Marissa sank onto the bed, her carpetbag still clutched in her hands. She looked around the room at the comfortable furnishings and the mountain view, and felt tears begin to slip down her cheeks. They were not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and gratitude. She had made it. Against all odds, she had escaped Deming and found her way to this beautiful place in the Colorado mountains. And it was all thanks to a stranger who had decided to help her when he had no reason to do so. Marissa pulled out her mother's locket and opened it, studying the tiny photographs. "I made it," she whispered to her parents. "I am safe. I am home." Dinner that evening was a revelation. Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast in honor of August's return: roasted chicken, fresh vegetables from the garden, biscuits that melted in the mouth, and apple pie for dessert. Mr. Chen turned out to be a quiet, thoughtful man who spoke little but listened intently. He asked Marissa a few polite questions about her background and seemed satisfied with her answers. "Miss Thompson will be helping with the horses," August explained over dinner. "She is a quick learner and has good instincts. I think she will be a real asset to the operation." "That is good," Mr. Chen said in careful English. "We can use the help. The mares will be foaling in the spring, and that is always a busy time. How many horses do you have now? Marissa asked. 23, not counting the 5 I just brought back, August said. We have 10 breeding mares, 2 stallions, 7 geldings that we use for work and training demonstrations, and 4 young horses that are not quite ready for sale yet. With the new additions, we should have a strong breeding season next year. The conversation flowed easily around the table, and Marissa found herself relaxing in a way she had not been able to in months. The Chens were warm and welcoming, treating her like she was already part of the family rather than a new employee. And August was more relaxed here than he had been on the trail, laughing easily and telling stories about past adventures. After dinner, August offered to show Marissa around the property while there was still light. They walked together through the corrals, where the horses came eagerly to greet August, clearly recognizing their owner and expecting treats. August introduced Marissa to each animal, explaining their personalities and quirks. "This is Juniper," he said, stroking the velvety nose of a dappled gray mare. "She is one of our best brood mares, always produces strong, healthy foals. And this big fellow is Thunder," he added, moving to a massive black stallion who regarded Marissa with intelligent eyes. "He has got the best temperament of any stallion I have ever worked with. His offspring are always in high demand." Marissa reached out tentatively to touch Thunder's neck, and the stallion lowered his head, allowing her to stroke him. "They are all so beautiful," she said. "I had no idea horses could be so individual, so full of personality." "Most people think of horses as just animals, tools for getting work done," August said. "But they are so much more than that. Each one has their own personality, their own preferences and fears. The key to good horse training is learning to understand each animal as an individual and working with their nature rather than against it." They continued the tour, August showing her the barn where feed and tack were stored, the training ring where young horses learned basic commands, the pastures where the herd grazed during the day. As they walked, August talked about his plans for expanding the operation, his hopes for developing new bloodlines, his dreams for making the ranch a premier destination for anyone in Colorado looking to buy quality horses. Marissa listened, fascinated by the passion in his voice. This was clearly more than just a business to August. It was his life's work, his purpose, his way of honoring his father's legacy. She found herself wanting to be part of that, to contribute to something meaningful and lasting. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold, they found themselves at the edge of the property, looking out over the valley. August was quiet for a long moment before he spoke. "I am glad you decided to come north with me," he said. "I know it was a leap of faith on your part, trusting a stranger and leaving behind everything familiar. But I think you will be happy here, Marissa. I think this place needs you as much as you needed to find it." Marissa looked up at him, at the strong profile silhouetted against the sunset, and felt her heart swell with emotion. "I am glad I came too," she said softly. "Thank you, August, for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for helping me when I was helpless, for giving me a chance to become something more than I was. I will not let you down." August turned to look at her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. There was warmth there and affection, and something deeper that she was afraid to name. "You could never let me down," he said. "I see you, Marissa Thompson. I see your strength, your courage, your determination to survive against impossible odds. You are exactly where you are supposed to be." For a moment, Marissa thought he might kiss her. She could feel the pull between them, the magnetic attraction that had been building since the day they met. But then August stepped back, breaking the tension. "We should head back. Mrs. Chen will worry if we are out after dark." As they walked back to the house together, Marissa felt a mixture of disappointment and relief. She was falling in love with August Donovan, she could no longer deny that. But she was also his employee, dependent on him for her livelihood and shelter. Starting a romantic relationship would complicate everything, could potentially ruin the fresh start she had been given. Better to keep her feelings to herself, to focus on learning her job and proving her worth. If August felt the same way she did, if there was truly something real between them, then it would reveal itself in time. But as she lay in her comfortable bed that night, listening to the sounds of the mountain night through her open window, Marissa could not stop thinking about the look in August's eyes, the tenderness in his voice when he said her name. She fell asleep with a smile on her face and hope blooming in her heart. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable routine. Marissa woke before dawn each day and joined August in the barn for morning feeding. He taught her how to properly mix grain and supplements for each horse based on their individual needs, how to check for signs of illness or injury, how to clean and maintain the stalls. The work was physically demanding, but Marissa found it deeply satisfying. There was something meditative about the repetitive tasks, something grounding about working with her hands and seeing tangible results. After morning chores, they would work on training. August started Marissa with the basics, leading horses, understanding body language, basic grooming techniques. She proved to be a natural, patient, and calm with even the most skittish animals. August seemed genuinely impressed with her progress. "You have a gift for this," he told her one morning as she successfully calmed a nervous young filly who had been spooked by a bird. "That kind of intuition cannot be taught. You either have it or you do not, and you definitely have it." Marissa glowed under his praise. She had never been particularly good at anything back in Baltimore. She had been just another factory girl, unremarkable and easily replaced. But here, working with the horses under August's patient guidance, she was discovering abilities she had never known she possessed. In the afternoons, she would help Mrs. Chen in the garden or with household tasks. The older woman was a wealth of knowledge about everything from preserving vegetables for winter to treating common ailments with herbs. She also proved to be an invaluable source of information about August. "Mr. August is a good man, but he is lonely, Mrs. Chen confided one afternoon as they worked together in the vegetable garden. "He spends all his time with the horses, never goes to town to socialize, never looks at any of the young ladies who would be very happy to catch his eye. My husband says Mr. August is married to his work, but I think he is just waiting for the right person to come along." Marissa kept her eyes on the tomato plant she was staking, afraid that if she looked at Mrs. Chen, the older woman would see everything she was feeling written plainly on her face. "Perhaps he prefers being alone," she suggested. Mrs. Chen made a dismissive sound. "No one prefers being alone. We all need companionship, someone to share our lives with. Mr. August, he has been hurt before, I think. Maybe that is why he keeps himself distant. But since you arrived, I have seen him smile more, laugh more. You are good for him, Miss Marissa." Before Marissa could respond to that loaded statement, Mr. Chen called for his wife from the barn, and the moment passed. But Mrs. Chen's words stayed with Marissa, turning over in her mind as she worked. Was it possible that August felt something for her beyond simple employer interest? Or was Mrs. Chen just engaging in wishful matchmaking? As summer deepened into early fall, Marissa's life at the ranch became increasingly rich and fulfilling. She grew stronger and more confident, her body adapting to the physical demands of ranch work. She developed deep bonds with many of the horses, particularly Daisy, who followed her around like a devoted dog whenever she was in the corrals. And she found herself increasingly drawn to August, despite her best efforts to maintain professional boundaries. It was not just his physical appearance, though she had to admit he was handsome in a rugged, weathered way. It was the kindness he showed to everyone he encountered, human and animal alike. It was the way he challenged her to learn and grow without making her feel inadequate. It was the sound of his laugh, rich and genuine, that seemed to chase away any shadows. It was the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention, with an expression that made her heart race. One evening in early September, August invited Marissa to join him for a ride up into the high meadows. "The aspen are starting to turn," he explained. "It is one of the most beautiful sights in Colorado. I thought you might enjoy seeing it." They rode out as the sun was beginning to set, climbing a steep trail that led to a series of alpine meadows high above the ranch. August had been right about the aspens. The trees were beginning to turn gold, their leaves shimmering in the evening breeze like thousands of tiny coins. Mixed with the deep green of the pines and the purple shadows of the mountains beyond, the effect was breathtaking. August led them to a clearing at the edge of one meadow, where they dismounted and stood together, looking out over the valley below. The ranch was a toy collection of buildings from this height, and beyond it, the land stretched away in waves of forest and mountain as far as the eye could see. "I never get tired of this view," August said softly. "No matter how many times I come up here, it still takes my breath away." "It is incredible," Marissa agreed. "I cannot believe I get to live in a place this beautiful." August turned to look at her, and there was something serious in his expression. "Marissa, there is something I have been wanting to talk to you about." Her heart began to pound. "What is it?" August seemed to struggle with his words, unusual for a man who was typically so direct. "You have been here for almost 2 months now, and I could not be happier with your work. You have exceeded every expectation I had. But more than that, I have come to value your company, your perspective, your presence. This ranch feels different with you here. It feels more like a home and less like just a place where I work." Marissa held her breath, afraid to hope, afraid to assume. "I am glad," she managed. "I feel the same way. This place, these people, you have all given me a new life. I am grateful every single day." "It is not gratitude I am looking for," August said, stepping closer to her. "Marissa, I need to be honest with you. From the moment I saw you in that pawn shop, something in me recognized something in you. I told myself I was just helping someone in need, that it was the right thing to do and nothing more. But that was not entirely true. I was drawn to you from the beginning, and every day since has only made those feelings stronger." Marissa's breath caught. "August, please let me finish," he said gently. "I know I am your employer, and I know that complicates things. The last thing I want is for you to feel pressured or obligated in any way. If you do not share my feelings, we can forget this conversation ever happened and go back to how things were. But if there is any chance that you might feel even a fraction of what I feel for you, then I had to tell you. I am falling in love with you, Marissa Thompson. Actually, I think I started falling in love with you the moment you tried to sell your mother's locket to pay debts you should never have owed in the first place." Tears sprang to Marissa's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sadness. "I was so afraid you saw me as just an employee," she confessed. "I have been fighting my feelings for you since we left Deming because I did not want to complicate things, did not want to risk losing what I had found here. But August, I am falling in love with you too. Maybe I have been since the day you told me I did not owe that town anything. You saw me when I was at my lowest, and you treated me like I was worth something. How could I not love you for that?" August's face broke into the widest smile Marissa had ever seen. He reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. "You are worth everything," he said fiercely. "You are strong and brave and kind and so much more than you realize. I do not want you to love me out of gratitude. I want you to love me because of who we are together, because of what we could build if we were brave enough to try." "I do," Marissa said, tears streaming down her face now. "I love you, August, not because you saved me, but because of who you are. Because you are patient and kind and passionate about your work. Because you treat everyone with dignity and respect. Because when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I have never felt before. Because when I am with you, I feel like I am home." August pulled her into his arms, and Marissa went willingly, resting her head against his chest and feeling his heart beating strong and steady beneath her ear. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other as the sun set over the mountains and the aspen trees whispered their approval in the evening breeze. Then August gently tipped Marissa's chin up and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was everything a first kiss should be, tender and exciting and just a little bit awkward in the best possible way. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. "So what happens now?" Marissa asked, her hands still resting on August's chest. "Now we figure it out together," August said. "I will not lie to you and say it will always be easy. Ranch life is hard and there will be challenges ahead. But if we face them together, I believe we can build something really special. I want you in my life, Marissa. Not just as my employee, but as my partner in every sense of the word." "I want that too," Marissa said. "More than anything." They rode back to the ranch as darkness fell, riding close together and stealing kisses whenever the trail was smooth enough to allow it. When they arrived back at the barn, Mr. and Mrs. Chen were waiting for them, and the knowing smiles on both their faces suggested they had been expecting exactly this development. "It is about time," Mrs. Chen said with satisfaction. "I was beginning to think I would have to lock you both in a room together until you figured it out." August laughed and pulled Marissa close against his side. "Mrs. Chen, you are entirely too perceptive for anyone's good." "I am just observant," Mrs. Chen said primly, "and I have eyes in my head. Anyone could see you two were meant for each other. Now come inside. I have made a special dinner to celebrate." The celebration dinner was joyful and relaxed, with Mrs. Chen plying them with her best dishes and Mr. Chen offering rare smiles and approving nods. As Marissa sat at the table, surrounded by people who had become family, with August's hand warm in hers, she felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. This was what home felt like. This was what love felt like. This was what she had been searching for without even knowing it. That night, August walked Marissa to her bedroom door, stealing one more long, sweet kiss before reluctantly letting her go. "Sleep well," he murmured against her lips. "We have a lot to talk about tomorrow." "Like what?" Marissa asked, her arms looped around his neck. "Like whether you would consider a permanent position here that does not involve mucking out stalls," August said with a smile. "I am thinking something more along the lines of co-owner, partner, eventually wife, if you will have me." Marissa's heart soared. "Are you proposing to me, August Donovan?" "Not yet," August said. "When I propose, it will be properly with a ring and everything. But I am telling you my intentions, Marissa. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to fill those empty bedrooms with children and turn this house into a real home. I am not asking you to decide tonight, but I wanted you to know where my heart is." "My heart is in exactly the same place," Marissa whispered. "Yes, August. Yes to all of it. Yes to being your partner. Yes to becoming your wife. Yes to building a family together. Yes to everything." August kissed her again, deeper this time, and Marissa felt the promise of their future in that kiss. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathless. "Tomorrow," August said firmly, as much to himself as to her. "We will talk more tomorrow. Right now, I need to let you get some sleep before I forget myself entirely." Marissa laughed and reluctantly stepped back into her room. "Good night, August. Good night, my love." The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. August and Marissa continued their daily routines with the horses, but now they worked side by side as true partners, making decisions together and planning for the ranch's future. August formally offered Marissa a partnership stake in the operation, insisting that she deserved a share in the business she was helping to build. "I cannot accept that," Marissa protested. "You have already done so much for me." "You have earned it," August countered. "Your work, your ideas, your dedication, they have all contributed to making this ranch better. Besides, if we are going to be married, what is mine will be yours anyway. I am just making it official." In late October, as the first snow began to fall on the high peaks, August proposed properly. He took Marissa back to the high meadow where they had first confessed their love, this time on a crisp fall morning when the aspen had turned to pure gold. He got down on one knee in the carpet of fallen leaves and pulled out a simple gold ring with a small but perfect diamond. "Marissa Thompson, you walked into my life when I least expected it and changed everything. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love for the rest of our days?" "Yes," Marissa said through happy tears. 1,000 times yes." The ring fit perfectly, and as August slipped it onto her finger, Marissa felt the last piece of her new life click into place. She was no longer the desperate girl trying to sell her mother's locket in a dusty pawn shop. She was August Donovan's fiancée, co-owner of a successful horse ranch, a woman who had found her purpose and her place in the world. They were married in early December, in a simple ceremony in the ranch house with Mr. and Mrs. Chen as witnesses and a traveling minister who rode circuit through the mountain communities. Marissa wore a dress Mrs. Chen had helped her sew from beautiful blue fabric August had bought on a trip to Denver. August wore his best suit, looking handsome and proud as Marissa walked down the stairs to stand beside him. The vows they exchanged were traditional but deeply felt. When August promised to love, honor, and cherish Marissa for as long as they both lived, Marissa could see the truth of those words shining in his eyes. And when she made the same promises in return, she meant every word with her whole heart. Their wedding night was everything Marissa had dreamed of, tender and passionate and full of joy. August was gentle with her, patient and loving, making sure her first time was as beautiful as he could make it. Afterward, they lay tangled together in August's big bed, and Marissa marveled at how far she had come from those dark days in Deming. "What are you thinking?" August asked, stroking her hair. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," Marissa said. "How lucky I am. 6 months ago, I was trying to sell my mother's locket just to survive another day. Now I am lying here with my husband in our home, planning our future. It feels like a dream." "It is real," August assured her. "You are real, I am real, and everything we have built together is real. And it is only going to get better from here." He was right. The years that followed were filled with hard work and deep happiness. The ranch prospered under their joint management, becoming known throughout Colorado for quality horses and fair dealing. Marissa discovered she had a talent not just for training horses, but for the business side of the operation as well. She took over the bookkeeping and customer relations, freeing August to focus on the breeding and training programs he loved. In the spring of 1885, Marissa gave birth to their first child, a healthy baby boy they named Robert Thomas, after her father and August's mentor. August was a devoted father from the moment he held his son, and watching him with the baby made Marissa fall in love with him all over again. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah Eleanor, after both their mothers. The little girl had her father's dark eyes and her mother's gentle temperament, and she quickly had August wrapped around her tiny finger. Mr. and Mrs. Chen remained with them through the years, becoming beloved surrogate grandparents to the children. Mrs. Chen taught Sarah how to cook and garden, while Mr. Chen showed Robert the fine art of carpentry and woodwork. The ranch house that had once felt too large and empty was now full of life and laughter. As the children grew, Marissa and August taught them to work with the horses, passing on the skills and knowledge that had brought them together. Robert proved to have his father's natural way with animals, while Sarah showed an interest in the business side of the operation, often sitting with Marissa as she worked on the books. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep and the day's work was done, Marissa and August would sit together on the porch of their home, looking out over the ranch they had built together. Sometimes they would talk about the early days, about the pawn shop in Deming and the long ride north that had changed both their lives. "You ever think about what would have happened if I had walked past that pawn shop?" August asked one evening, his arm around Marissa's shoulders. "I try not to," Marissa admitted. "But I think everything worked out exactly as it was meant to. We found each other when we both needed to be found. You saved me, August, but in a lot of ways, I think I saved you too. We gave each other a reason to believe in happiness again." "You definitely saved me," August agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I was just going through the motions before you came along, working hard but not really living. You taught me how to love again, how to hope again. You made my house into a home and my life into something worth celebrating." 20 years after that day in the Deming pawn shop, Marissa stood in the same spot on the ranch porch, watching her grown children work with the horses in the corrals below. Robert was 20 years old now, a skilled horseman who was beginning to make a name for himself as a trainer. Sarah was 18, beautiful and clever, with plans to open a satellite office of the ranch business in Denver. August came up behind Marissa and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. They had both aged, their hair showing threads of gray, their faces marked by years of sun and wind and honest work. But the love between them had only deepened with time, growing stronger and richer with each passing year. "Penny for your thoughts," August murmured. "I was just thinking about how blessed we are," Marissa said, leaning back against him. "Look at what we have built, August. Not just the ranch, but our family, our life together. I could never have imagined any of this back in Deming." "You do not owe this town anything," August quoted with a smile, repeating the words he had spoken to her so long ago. "But I think Deming owes you an apology for how they treated you." "I do not need an apology," Marissa said. "Everything that happened led me here to you, to this life. I would not change a single moment, even the painful ones, because they all brought me home." "Speaking of home," August said, "the children have been hinting that they would like us to consider expanding the ranch, maybe buying the property to the east that just came up for sale. What do you think?" Marissa turned in his arms to face him, seeing the excitement in his eyes. Even after all these years, he still had that passion for the work, that drive to keep building and improving. It was one of the many things she loved about him. "I think it is a wonderful idea," she said. "Robert and Sarah are both committed to staying and growing the business. We should invest in their future, help them build something they can pass on to their own children someday." "Have I told you lately that you are brilliant?" August asked, grinning. "Not since this morning," Marissa teased. "But I never get tired of hearing it." August kissed her, slow and sweet and familiar, the kind of kiss that comes from decades of knowing and loving someone. When they broke apart, Marissa rested her hand over her heart, feeling the outline of her mother's locket beneath her dress. She still wore it every day, a reminder of where she had come from and how far she had traveled. "I love you," she told August, the words as true and powerful as they had been the first time she spoke them. "I love you too," August replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Marissa and August stood together on their porch, surrounded by everything they had built through love, hard work, and faith in each other. The ranch that had started as August's inheritance had become their shared legacy. The house that had once been too quiet was now filled with memories of laughter and love. And the desperate young woman who had tried to sell her last belonging in a dusty New Mexico town had become a confident, capable woman who had found her place in the world. In the years that followed, the ranch continued to thrive under the combined leadership of the Donovan family. Robert married a schoolteacher from Denver named Clara, and they gave Marissa and August 3 grandchildren who filled the ranch house with noise and joy. Sarah eventually married as well, to a businessman who admired her intelligence and drive, and they had twin boys who showed early signs of inheriting the family's way with horses. August and Marissa eased into their later years gracefully, gradually turning over more of the day-to-day operations to their children while still remaining active and involved. They took pleasure in teaching their grandchildren to ride, in watching the next generation of Donovans carry on the traditions they had established. On their 30th wedding anniversary, August took Marissa back to the high meadow one last time. They were in their 60s now, moving a bit slower but still strong and healthy. They stood together in the place where August had proposed, where they had first admitted their love for each other, and looked out over the ranch that sprawled across the valley below. 30 years, August said wonderingly. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "The best 30 years of my life," Marissa said. "Thank you, August, for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing in me when I could not believe in myself. For loving me through all the years and all the changes. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," August corrected gently. "This life we have built, we built it together. Equal partners, just like I promised that day in Deming." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Marissa Donovan. Being your husband has been the greatest honor of my life." They kissed there in the meadow, surrounded by golden aspen and purple mountains, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built a love that would last for all their days. The silver locket that Marissa had once been willing to sell, the last belonging she had owned in her darkest hour, rested over her heart, a reminder of endings that became beginnings and desperation that transformed into hope. As they rode back down the mountain together, Marissa thought about the long road that had brought her from Baltimore to Deming to this beautiful Colorado ranch. She thought about her parents, who had dreamed of a better life out west and had not lived to see it. She thought about the town that had tried to break her and the stranger who had saved her. And she thought about the 30 years of love and partnership that had followed that chance meeting in a dusty pawn shop. Life had not been fair to her at first, taking her mother to illness and her father to accident, stranding her in a hostile town with debts she could not pay. But life had also brought her August Donovan, a man with a kind heart and strong hands who had looked at a desperate young woman and seen someone worth saving. Together, they had built something that would outlast them both: a thriving ranch, a loving family, and a legacy of treating people with dignity and respect no matter their circumstances. Years later, When Marissa and August were in their 80s, sitting on their porch and watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, someone asked Marissa if she had any regrets about her life. She thought carefully about the question, about all the hardships and heartaches, about the months of suffering in Deming and the father she had buried in that dusty cemetery. "No regrets," she said finally. "Everything happened exactly as it needed to. Every hardship taught me something. Every loss made me stronger. And all of it, the good and the bad together, brought me to the life I was meant to live with the man I was meant to love. I would not change a single moment." August, sitting beside her with their hands intertwined as they had been for more than 50 years, smiled and squeezed her fingers gently. "Same here," he said. "Best decision I ever made was walking into that pawn shop in Deming. Best decision I ever made was trusting you enough to leave with you," Marissa replied. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains they had loved for so long, surrounded by generations of family they had created together. And if sometimes Marissa's hand went to the silver locket she still wore, touching the engraved roses and thinking of the mother and father she had lost so long ago, she did so with gratitude rather than grief. Her parents had wanted her to find a better life out west, and she had. Not in California as they had planned, but in Colorado, in the arms of a man who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. The ranch continued to prosper long after Marissa and August were gone, passing through generations of Donovans who remembered the story of how it all began. The tale of the desperate young woman and the cowboy who saved her became family legend, told to each new generation as a reminder of the power of compassion, the importance of treating people with dignity, and the truth that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually the beginning of our greatest blessings. And in a small cemetery on the edge of what had once been Deming, New Mexico, if anyone had bothered to visit the grave of Robert Thompson, they might have noticed the fresh wildflowers that appeared every few years, placed there by descendants who had never known the man but honored his memory because his daughter had become the matriarch of a family built on love, hard work, and the courage to keep going even when everything seemed lost. The flowers were a thank you, a recognition that his dream of a better life out west had come true after all, just not in the way he had imagined. Marissa Thompson Donovan had started her western journey trying to sell her last belonging to a predatory pawnbroker in a hostile town. She ended it as a beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, co-owner of one of the most successful horse ranches in Colorado, and living proof that sometimes the darkest moments in our lives are just the night before the dawn. And it all began with a cowboy who looked at a desperate young woman and said the words that changed everything. "You do not owe this town anything." Those words had set her free in more ways than one. Free from debt, yes, but more importantly, free from the belief that she was worthless, that her circumstances defined her, that she was trapped with no way out. August had given her more than money that day in the pawn shop. He had given her hope, dignity, and eventually love. Together, they had built a life that neither could have created alone, proving that sometimes the most important moments in our lives come from the kindness of strangers who choose to help even when they have no obligation to do so. Their love story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though it had started with a kind of rescue. It was a story of two people who found each other at the right moment, who chose to build something together day by day, year by year, through hard work and dedication and deep, abiding love. It was a story of partnership and respect, of growing together rather than apart, of facing life's challenges as a team. And it was a story that proved love could bloom even in the hardest soil, could thrive even in the most unlikely circumstances, and could last a lifetime when nurtured by two people committed to making it work. In the end, Marissa Thompson's story was not about a woman who needed saving. It was about a woman who found the strength to save herself with a little help from someone who believed she was worth the investment. It was about resilience and courage, and the power of choosing hope even when despair seems easier. And it was about the transformative power of love, the kind of love that sees past circumstances to the person underneath, that offers partnership instead of pity, that builds rather than consumes. The silver locket that had almost been sold for $12 in a Deming pawn shop remained in the Donovan family for generations, passed down from mother to daughter as a reminder of where they came from and what they had overcome. Inside, the photographs of Marissa's parents gradually faded with time, but the story remained fresh, told and retold until it became part of the family's identity. They were people who helped those in need, who treated others with dignity, who understood that sometimes the most important thing you can do is tell someone they do not owe the world anything except their best effort to live authentically and well. And somewhere in the Colorado mountains, on a ranch that continued to thrive long after its founders were gone, the spirit of Marissa and August's love story lived on in every horse trained with patience and respect, in every business deal conducted with fairness and honor, in every family gathering filled with laughter and joy. Their legacy was not just the land they had cultivated or the business they had built, but the values they had instilled in generations of children who learned that true wealth had nothing to do with money and everything to do with the people you loved and the life you built with them. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West of 1883, and lasting until both Marissa and August drew their final breaths in the home they had made together, surrounded by family and love, and the knowledge that they had lived well and loved deeply. And it all started with a simple act of kindness from a stranger who looked at a desperate young woman trying to sell her last belonging and decided to help instead of walking away. Sometimes, that is all it takes to change a life. One person who cares enough to make a difference, one moment of compassion that ripples forward through time, one choice to do the right thing even when it would be easier not to. That was the true legacy of Marissa and August Donovan, a legacy of love and kindness that would endure long after they were gone, inspiring generations to come with the simple but powerful truth that we all have the ability to change lives, including our own, if we are brave enough to take the first step.